The enum.
Do you need a comma after the returned? Is that why it's throwing an error?
Well, it's just a constructor, so you shouldn't need a return. Order dot status and order dot status. Okay, so actually, if you do this dot status in your constructor, let's see what that does. Still giving you that ambiguity issue?
Right.
Okay. Actually, sorry, mouse over that again. What does that say? A little bit to the right.
Sorry, what?
Sorry, just looking at. Why is there ambiguity? There should not be any ambiguity.
Fuck ambiguity.
I literally have it written like the exact same.
And it's not giving you an issue, Kevin?
Oh. Hold on, let me look.
And you cleaned it and rebuilt it?
Like, I didn't rebuild it. I just did the clean. I did that. Do I have to rebuild it?
Try it again, yeah.
Should I click rebuild or just clean?
Try rebuild.
Yeah, my code is like letter for letter the same as well.
What does that do between order status and order dot status?
So building is this is a bit comp sci-ish, but whenever you're hitting build, you're telling it to compile. So it's taking your code and turning it into something the computer can read behind the scenes. Why does it think that there is? Why does it think that there is ambiguity there? I do not understand that. Do you have another order sitting around anywhere? Like, yeah, I can't.
Okay, it's fine. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's really weird. That might just be IntelliSense being stupid or something like that. That's very odd. Yeah, I can't quite figure that out right now. But if you're still trying to figure it out later on, let me know, because that's very odd.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so hope everyone's doing all right. We're going to continue on with the lab from yesterday, because I, of course, gave you guys lab 6 and then realized that it was much bigger than I'd intended it to be. So I realized nobody had finished the last lab. So I want you guys to spend time finishing up yesterday's lab. I've added a small amount of work to our system, and that is just we want to add an enum and use it for validation when we save stuff. So I'll post that in Slack, but really we're just doing the same thing as we were doing yesterday. Okay, so that's our new document. It's just one extra thing. So if you finish yesterday's lab and need one extra thing to do, I also just wanted to be a little bit clearer about, so I realized I was talking with Mohammed about what you guys were working on earlier, and I realized I've been a bit imprecise with the language I've been using when talking about this, about talking with this thing. So I've been talking about using lists inside the hotel and how that's kind of like a database. Like you guys remember how I've been explaining, like the hotel is kind of like our database. So in reality, the database is not a database is not a list of objects. It is a list of IDs, and that's it. It's a list of IDs and some info beside it. It doesn't have a database does not have objects. What we're doing here is similar to what's called an object relational mapping. So that's basically a layer of programming that we put on top of a database so that we can use it more easily in a way that we're more comfortable with without having to just use IDs and values. So when I'm saying that our system that we're using is like a database, our system is actually like an object relational map that is on top of a database. So don't get those two mixed up, especially as when we get into actually working with databases, we're going to take two very different approaches to building them. This is more similar to what we're going to call a code first approach. And that's going to be, we're going to write the database and do everything on the database in C#. We're never going to like interact with it directly. We're going to use C# to talk to a database and tell it to do stuff. I'm getting a call from Nova Scotia right now. I have no idea why. Anyway, so the important thing is what we're doing right now is an abstracted version of what how C# might interact with a database, but it's not like how a database works. So just keep that in mind as we're moving forward, that this is like a layer that we put on top of a database to make our lives easier when we're doing lists and stuff like that. And tomorrow, we're actually gonna, I think tomorrow we'll review, and then the next day we're actually going to refactor our program so that it works more like an actual database. We're going to use IDs, and we're going to put those in a little list. So that's going to act more like a database itself. But for now, just remember, we're basically working with an object relational map, is what this is called. I realize that's a bit of an information dump, but just try to bear in mind that when you hear ORM or object relational map, that's sort of what we're doing here with our objects and lists and things like that. That's kind of what we're leaning towards. This is not exactly like a database. Hope that didn't add a bunch of confusion. It's not really going to come up later on so much as if you're looking back at this stuff, just kind of bear that in mind. But I've been talking with Mohammed about how we're teaching this stuff and just wanted to kind of make that distinction as clear as I could. So I have the next lab posted. So we just need to finish up yesterday's lab and today's. And since I said I would do a short little review of what we have built so far every day, I'm not going to do that at the start because I don't think anybody has finished yet. I'm going to do that at the end of today. So maybe at 3 o'clock, I'll briefly go over how I have mine built. Okay, so I realized that was a lot. Does anyone have any questions as to what we're doing today? Okay, I will let you guys finish up Lab 6, and we will talk about it at 3 o'clock. And of course, you can send me any messages in the meantime. I've just gotten a question from my partner who is. I've just gotten a message from my partner who has much more experience in teaching than I have, asking what questions does everyone have, rather than does anyone have any questions. So, what questions do you guys have?
I have lots of questions, but I feel like my questions, I don't know how to like ask them their question. Like, I just don't know how to do a lot of the stuff.
Okay, well, lab is all about reinforcing kind of what was taught in lecture. So if you want to stick around and just kind of chat about what we're doing, that's great. If you want to turn off your speakers and go about building stuff, that's awesome. If you want to chat about what we're doing and see If we all have the same understanding of things, that's great too. So why don't we just kind of discuss that? Oh. At 3 p.m. we were reviewing. Hi, Soria. So yeah, at 3 p.m. I'm just gonna briefly go over like what I built, and how that might be similar or different to what you're building. Because I realized like I gave a lot of work out yesterday, which I didn't really intend. Pardon me. Sorry, Katie's being very distracting. She's dancing with the cat, so I'm trying to pay attention here. So Jen, like, so you said you had a lot of questions, but you weren't really sure how to state them.
I think most of my questions will be answered when you show us how to do the second part of the lab.
Okay.
So I'll wait till then, I guess.
Okay. Well, tell you what, give it a shot. See if you can try building it. Don't worry if it works or it doesn't work or if it's crazy or whatever. Just get a shot and we'll kind of review it.
I've given it many shots, but I'll keep trying. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, just like I wish I had a method to follow for this. Okay, yeah. We'll kind of get back to it at 3 o'clock. Hey, Yishin, yep. Mm-hmm. I just realized I muted myself because my cat was screaming at me. So one thing I actually tweaked a little bit in the last lab, I wasn't sure if anybody had gotten there, but that's a good question. So I decided that the only thing I should change, the one thing I decided to change is that everybody can rent a room. So anybody can rent any room, but only people with that like VIP membership get the like loyalty points for renting a premium room. So anybody can rent any room, but the members only get the points if they rent a premium room. That's kind of a little change I did. I wasn't sure if anybody had hit that already, but yeah. So if I'm a normal client, I can rent a regular room or a premium room. If you're a VIP, you can rent a normal room, but you won't get any like PC Optimum points or whatever it is, or air miles. But if you rent a premium room, you do get the points at the end, air miles or whatever. Yeah, so that, and I changed that specifically so I could do that email validation. So yeah, that's just a minor change I put in. That shouldn't be hard to change.
Okay, wait. So VIPs don't have to get like the premium rooms, and regular people can get premium rooms.
That's right. So anybody can rent any kind of room, but the only way that people get any sort of loyalty points is if VIP people rent a premium room.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the unfortunately, as I make up these examples, they get weirder and weirder as they go on. So that is one of the downsides of doing these for a few days at a time.
At least it's written down somewhere for us to reference. Like,
That is
I
true.
appreciate that structure.
That's true. I'm very proud of that too. Spent a long time writing these.
Sorry?
I spent a long time writing these, so I'm glad people appreciate them. Okay, so I will let. Oh, sorry. So that design is actually correct.
Yeah, that's what he just changed it to.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I actually made a little bit of a change. But your design actually it conforms to that change. Okay, that's all right. We all have days like that. Okay. Sorry, is my sound quality poor? Okay. I'm seeing a thumbs up from Millie.
No, I wanted to say it's great.
Okay. So it's good, but I'll also rewrite these to be a bit more clear later on. So yeah, you guys are kind of my lab rats for these write-ups. So if they're bad, that's unfortunate for you, but it's better for the later class. Okay, so I'll reconvene with everybody at 3, and we'll go over a quick little solution.
I think like all of us are just gonna wait for you to show us your solution.
That's totally not the point though. The whole point of lab is that you try it and then we discuss.
But that's what I did. I worked on it all day yesterday trying. So like I'm just gonna wait, I guess. I'll try again. It's fine. Whatever. Everyone else needs to try. It's fine. It's fine.
Okay. I'm sorry. We'll also do the whole thing together tomorrow as well. So before moving on, so we'll do a double review thing.
Also, a side note: does your cat ever fetch you things? My cat brought me his like laser pointer today. He was like, "Mommy, you're gonna play this with me."
That's really funny. What Tuna will like find. She has these 3 toys. One of them is a little mouse with like a feathery tail, and others they're all like mice shaped toys. And if she catches one, she will start just screaming at the top of her lungs with it in her mouth and like bring it to us in the middle of the night, which is really scary sometimes because it's like this weird shriek.
But she's proud of herself. She's like, "Look what I got."
Apparently that is true. I started reading like, why does my cat scream when it finds toys? And apparently that is the case. And like every night, no matter where I put those toys, I will find the 3 of them in a pile at the foot of our bed. So like every night she wants us to know that she found them.
But she's a hunter. Yeah, my cat's like that too.
Yeah.
Sorry, just thought I'd ask.
No, that's fine. I love talking about my cats. So. I will let you guys work for a little bit, and then I will get back to you. Actually, Oz just threw one of his toys at me.
Zach, when I write constructor for the create client, so I have to have something in the parameters and then address it in like the curly braces, or
Right. So for the so what you'll see for create methods like this, and this is not uncommon for especially for object relational models, is that I have to make like a object that shows up like a few layers down in the program. So I don't just directly invoke like new client or new user. In this case, in a database, you'll often have users. I don't make new user. I invoke like the user manager classes create user function, and I give it a bunch of parameter. I give it a bunch of arguments and its parameters, and then it does a bit of work, and eventually it'll call that. But the point being that hotel should have a create user method on it, and it should call the constructor on client. So client has a constructor. Hotel will take some parameters in its create client method that will then invoke that constructor and feed those parameters into it. So it's kind of like creating it one layer down.
okay. Thank you.
How are people feeling with that idea? Has anybody kind of made a create client or create room or whatever method that they feel happy with? That they'd be interested in looking at? So I feel like this is actually a bit of a sticking point. So maybe maybe I could just kind of go over this with everybody before waiting. People just kind of feel like not sure about it.
There's a couple people still not back though. 'cause we
Oh yeah, that's true. Okay. I'll wait until we have more people.
Hi, Zach. I have a question.
Hey, Sula. Yep.
Uh, in the client class, they have a subclass called VIP client.
That's right. Yeah.
When we initiate the hotel, there is a list of clients. The list of clients, can we add a VIP client in the client of
Yes.
list?
Absolutely. So that's one of the really nice things about having a subclass is that it's like all VIP clients are clients, but not
Yeah.
all clients are VIP clients. Since VIP clients are clients, they can be put in a list of clients.
Oh, yeah. That does not need to create a list of VIP client. The same
That's right.
the same as the rooms. Yeah.
That's right. And that's a concept that we'll be spending a lot of time on in C#, is this idea that like things that inherit can be collected together.
Mm. So when we loop for the list of clients, we can say we can find if the client is a VIP client, how we can compare if we reserve a room and the parameter is the client, that's we put a name or credit card, and when we loop the list of client, how we find if it is a VIP client.
So that we can use a C# method that is just called is. So you'll say if
it contains a VIP number, is that right?
yeah, that's one way you could do it. Although that might cause problems during compilation. The general thing I would do is I'll sometimes write a method with two overloads, like one for client and one for VIP client, that take a client or VIP client as a parameter. Or the other thing you could do, you could just do a statement. I'll put it in comments. It'd be like if.
Oh, can you share? If my client.
So that will return a Boolean based on if they are that subclass or not.
Oh, okay. I will try it. Thank you.
Hey everyone. So, how are we doing in terms of things? Do we want to maybe review now, or do people want a bit more time to see if they can finish up on their own?
We can start now.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just gonna code up a couple of these. I don't think I'll code the entire thing, but I'll just sort of give an idea of what we're looking at. So I'm actually just going to reset this so I can do these from scratch. Hi, sorry. Yeah, I'm just fixing up some stuff in just a second here. Okay, is everyone able to see my Visual Studio here?
Yes.
Okay, good stuff. To kind of work with our classes, I'm just going to give an example of how we would want a create room to work. So I've, sorry about that hammering. I hope you guys can't hear that. So to get this constructor working, it's fairly straightforward. I have a room with a number capacity, and we have our Boolean occupied to see if the current reservation is actually the current one or if it is not currently occupied. And then I have a list of reservations here. And when I was talking about that ORM thing, or object relational mapping, we'll typically have lists of other objects or just properties of other objects. Again, this is not how a DB will do it because DBs don't carry objects. But for our ORM, we use these as navigational properties. So if I want to see, like, want to get a list of all the reservations, I can use C# methods to iterate through that. But in any case, I create my constructor. So I want to be able to set a number and a capacity. So that number equals number, capacity equals capacity. I want to automatically set occupied to equal false, because when I just create a room, I'm assuming there's nobody in it yet. And then I initialize my list of reservations. Premium room is similar. We just have the additional amenities and VIP values on here. And for my constructor, I inherit the base constructor, and then I add on additional amenities and VIP values. So what I want to do is I want hotels. So in my instructions, it says hotel should be the only object in our program that creates client, room, and reservation objects. Therefore, our hotel should have a create room method. They should take the same arguments as the constructors of those classes and store those in the hotels lists. So what I want to do here is I go to my hotel because my hotel is kind of my central class, my class that keeps control over everything else. And I want to create a room and make sure it ends up in the list. So I'm going to do a public. I'm going to return the room just for convenience. Because maybe I want to create a new room and immediately use that. I don't have to have this as room, but that's what I'm deciding to do. I'm going to say room, new room. So I'm going to invoke the room constructor. So I'm going to create a new room object here. So I'm getting a chat message, which of course I can't see. Thank you, Zoom. Okay. So the first thing is room needs a number and a capacity. So what I'm going to do is room actually has some extra stuff on it that I need to put on it. So I'm going to say, I'm going to have int room number here. And I'll show you why in a minute. And an int for capacity. So if I just pass these into the constructor, I give it room number, capacity. This is going to throw me an error because room number needs to be an int, but again, I'll go to that. And then I'm just going to add this room to the hotel's list of rooms, because remember our hotel is keeping track of all our rooms. So I'm going to say rooms.add new room. I'm going to return new room. So now my hotel is going to have this room inside the list. It's not just floating around inside the main method of the program. It's in. If I want to get this room, I just say hotel dot rooms dot, and then I create my method for, I could do first. So this is just a little pseudocode for, if I want to find a room with this number, I look at the list of rooms on my hotel, and I grab the one with that number. But anyway, what I've done here is I actually need to add on a the hotel's unique prefix. So I'm actually going to have string and I'm going to pass that in. Now, as I was saying, we want to put an app.config, our prefix. So I'm going to go to app.config. I've actually got one here. But let's say we wanted to create again. So I create so this is XML. So I need to create an app settings key. And of course I deleted that and I instantly forgot about the syntax. So I'm going to cheat and undo that and add key. Okay. So in app settings, I'm going to add key. And I'll call it hotel prefix. I'm going to call it number prefix actually. And our value is, our hotel is called the Overload Hotel, so I'm going to call it the OHL. So now this exists in my app config. Now to add this, I decided to call my hotel the Overload Hotel.
Okay.
So I created my config. You can call it whatever you want, but I decided to add the value of my prefix as OHL. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that. So I'm going to say string prefix equals, what is it? The config manager. Does anyone remember off the top of their head what it is?
Yeah, configuration.
Configuration manager. And we want a key. So it is app settings.
App
settings.
settings. Yeah.
Get.
Get. Thank you. I haven't used this in a while. And our index was room number prefix. So our new number is going to be prefix. Oops. So this is basically how I want to control everything that goes on when I make a new room. I want to add on my prefix. I want to give that to the new constructor. I want to make sure that my first number that I get is only an integer. I want to make sure I can't put in like ABCD. So I'm going to set that as an integer. I'm going to append on that prefix. I'm going to pass that to our new room. And then I'm going to put that room in the list of rooms on the hotel. And I'm just going to return it for my own convenience. So in the main method here, I've created my new hotel object. If I want to create a new room, I'm not going to call this. I can't remember how to prevent that. I think there are ways you can prevent people from doing that, but I'm not going to do that right now. What I'm instead going to do, I'm going to say hotel.createRoom 101, capacity of 4 people. And then I could say hotel.rooms.toList if I want. And that'll show me my room, as well as all the other rooms in the hotel. So I put this method on my hotel object so I can control exactly how these are made, and I can do whatever I want with them without worrying about them just floating around without a list or something like that. So that's the basic idea behind creating these create methods. So I think that follows the thing. And I actually want to create premium room as well. So I'm going to do an overload of create room. I don't actually love the idea of doing this as an overload, but I'm going to just so we can kind of get some practice of how overloads work. I'm going to say int room number. And what else do I need on a premium room? I need additional amenities, and a VIP value. So string or an int? I can't remember. Int. No, is it not gonna? Oh, all right. And I'm actually going to take that. I'm just going to take this prefix method here. In reality, I should make a method for doing that. I shouldn't just copy the code. So that's kind of bad form. And I'm going to say, oh, and of course, oops, sorry. Okay. Now, because a premium room inherits from a room object, it is a room object. So if I return this room, this premium room, it counts as a room. If I add it to rooms, it counts as a room. But this allows me to call create room in 2 different ways. If I call create room and I don't give it a room, and I don't give it amenities or value, I create a new room. If I create a new room and I do give it amenities and a value, it'll create a premium room. So C# knows which of these I'm calling based on the parameters that I've given. So if I do a second one, say,
How many Stephen King books did you reference in this? I count 3.
at least two that I can think of.
Because you have 1408
Oh
and
yeah, I've got.
and then you said Derry, which is from It, right? Because that's where it was filmed.
I think Derry's in like a lot of things. He references Derry in a bunch of stuff, I think. Okay,
Sorry,
good
I know
catch
it's
on.
off topic. I just
No, good catch on the 1408. I was wondering if anyone was going to notice that. So this is going to create two room objects. But because I've added these two extra values in the argument, it knows that I want to call this second overload here. So that's a way that we can use overloads to create different subclasses based on what we want. I could create a method that's like, if I carry these, then create a premium, otherwise then create a normal one. But I find doing overloads like this is easier. And it's more type safe, I think. So yeah, that's one of the methods. Probably the most challenging method beyond reservation. Create clients is pretty straightforward. So what kind of questions does anyone have about this, what we're doing here? Sorry, whoever's asking me in chat, there we go. Okay, so Saria is asking in chat if I wanted to make changes later. Okay, so if we wanted to change what our room is, or do you mean like changing the class would be, okay, so that's the nice thing about adding our room number here. And what this actually kind of mimics is in a database or in an ORM. Like, so we're technically not working with a database now, we're working with something that's kind of like an object relational map. I've given a unique number to each of these rooms. And you know what I should actually do here that's really important? I should make sure that this room doesn't already exist. So I'm going to add on to hotel. Okay. So the reason I'm adding this validation here is because I don't want two room 101s in here. I actually just want to make sure that this is going to be entirely unique. Because if I want to find, like I've created my new room here, I don't have any way of grabbing that out of the list because now it's kind of lost in this list. But if I say, I want to get room 101, I say, why is it getting mad at me?
The name should not start integer.
Yeah, good call. So I would say, so I'm going to give, this is super annoying. I'm going to give you a little preview of link here. So that's the really nice thing. First is a link method where it's going to return the first object that has a number with this. This is cheating. I should just do this the real way. Okay, so I'm going to say room, my room. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I have to initialize this value, but it doesn't have I have to declare this value, but I'm not initializing it because I don't know what the value is going to be. I'm going to iterate over all the rooms in my hotel's list of rooms. And if it has the number that I've given it, it's going to declare, oh, this is the right one. And when we get into LINQ, like LINQ has a million different methods for doing this exact operation of looking in a list of our ORM. So looking in our list of our object relational models and finding the object that we want that corresponds to the right thing in the database. So what we're actually going to do in the future is we're going to reorganize and refactor this a little bit to work more like a real database where these rooms are not just going to have numbers, they're going to have IDs. And we're going to make sure that nothing has the same ID because it's these unique values here that lets us dig into these lists in the hotel and pull out the rooms that we want or the clients or whatever. As long as we make sure there's a unique value on here, that's how we can find the proper objects. Overlook Hotel. Did I do that wrong? I did do that wrong. That doesn't make sense. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. So this is the basic trajectory of what we've been doing is we have our constructors on room and premium room. We use those constructors in hotels create room functions to make a new room. But because it's inside the hotel's create room method, we can make sure that it gets thrown into a list on the hotel. And then we can return it to do whatever we want with it. But this part right here is the important part. And I'm actually, you know what? I'm going to do a very basic create reservation thing here because I think that's also very important to kind of illustrate the relationship between the two. So I'm going to do public reservation. I'm actually going to take a string room number and a string client name. So if I wanted to, I could just use these objects like room, room, client, client, but I'm actually going to create a method for finding these. So I'm going to say, so I'm going to declare these. I'm going to say for each. So I'm going to look through all the rooms in the hotel. If
Sorry, Jack. Can I ask you a question?
yeah, sure.
This your method, create reservation. It is something similar which you wrote reserve room. You said in this text, reserve room should create reservation object.
That's right. Yeah, I should call this reserve room.
Okay, okay, and it accepts room and client as arguments. Sorry, it is the same. I asked that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just kind of using it because I think I actually really like. So sorry, I asked the question. How do I get these things out of these lists? And I think that's a better way of doing it, but I didn't expect anybody to kind of anyone to kind of have a good answer right now. So why don't we actually do that first? Let's do the way that I specified in the. Let's do it the way I specified in the lab. So I'm going to just say room, room, client, client, and int occupants. Okay. So first thing I need to check is if room.capacity is greater than or equal to occupants. Yeah, we should. So if the capacity is greater than occupants and it is not occupied, we'll reserve the room. Else, okay. So yeah, we'll validate does the room capacity have enough, and is it occupied? If it's not, we'll throw different exceptions. I could just throw one exception if either of these fail, but it's better to try to create more nuanced exceptions and create messages that are specific to the error. So I'm going to say, I actually have to, oh, since I'm throwing exceptions, I don't have to. Oh, that's spelled wrong. There's like, when I'm running this on Zoom, there's just a tiny bit of lag. So it's hard to type, which is what I'm going to blame that on. It's not my own fault that I typed that wrong. So I want to create a new reservation. And I should have a constructor on this. Oh, I got rid of my constructors on this, so I'll just create one again. So I'm going to say public reservation. It's going to have a, just to be super quick, it's occupants. We're going to assume that this is a current one, although I created an overload earlier that allows us to create one in the past. So I'm going to say if I'm creating a new one, that obviously the date is now. Occupants equals our occupant argument. Is current will be true. And our client will be our client argument. And our room will be our room argument. So when I was talking to you guys about an object relational database, the fact that these two objects are now tied onto this one, like I have a property on reservation that points to a client object, and I have a property on reservation that points to a room object. That's a really important part of an object relational model, is that we can use objects to refer to other objects. A real database does not do that because a database doesn't have objects in it, but that's a really helpful part of an ORM that makes dealing with databases easier. So when I make a new reservation, I will give it the occupants and the client and the room. And I will finally return my reservation. So if I want to create a new reservation, I give it a room object, a client object, and an occupants object. Oh, not all code paths return a value. Oh, let's just say else. Don't know what happened, but something bad happened. Okay. So that's our basic thing for creating reserve. Reserve room should verify that the argument room is not reserved. It should set occupied equals true on that room and create a new reservation object that connects the room to the client by setting them as its property values. Its date should set the time the reservation is instantiated, and its current value should be true. So another thing I need to do with this actually is I need to add this reservation to the hotel. So first off, this room, it's occupied, should be true. And it should be added to the room's reservations. Should be added to the client's reservations. And it should be added to the hotel's list of reservations. So basically what I'm saying is create a new reservation object. That reservation will refer to the number of occupants, the client that is going into this room, and the room that the client is occupying. The room now knows that it has a current occupant. The room now has a reference to this reservation. The client has a reference to this reservation, and the hotel has a reference to this reservation. And finally, I just return the reservation for the sake of convenience.
Do they not like accrue points if it's a premium room?
Right. So we should also have a reserve room on. What's the best way to go about this? Sorry? Oh, you've heard 4 different overloads. Okay. See, that's not unreasonable. It's not great. I'm trying to think of the best possible way to do it. Let's just say, so we care about if
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. So that's one of the advantages of writing overloads is because if I just write if client is VIP client, then I don't have access to those. So that's why we do want to. Man, it was really noisy out here today. So one of the reasons we want to write an overload is so we don't have to do this. So we actually so we know we have access.
I thought if there's a premium room, it can be resolved in this method. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah,
so
that's the only sense is we can compare it if it is a VIP and premium room, and just add the value to the VIP. Is that the last question? Is that method?
Yeah, so we
could add a method to just add the value, VIP value.
Yeah, that makes sense. So why don't we do that? That Soleil brings up a really good point of instead of having to make a whole new overload, we could make a public method. We could make a method called so I want to client dot So Suli actually brings up an excellent idea, which is we'll add a new method that if there are both, then we will put them here. So but it's still gonna, okay. Yeah, it still doesn't know. Okay. What's a good way to do that? See, this is one of the, and this is one of the reasons why we actually tend to discourage inheritance as things get bigger, because
can we add? Can we create a new room called new premium room equals this room? Is that right? No, maybe not.
I could actually, let's see. So one thing I could say is, oh. I'm just gonna cheat and do first. So again, I can't. Explicit conversion exists. Are you missing a cast? So I actually, like, I have to. Yeah. So this is one of those things where I have to, if I really want to avoid all these issues, I have to create an overload. I can't think of any great ways to do it without doing an overload right now. So what I had in mind is an overload like this. It would be okay. So this would be an overload where if the room ends up being a premium room and the client is a VIP client, then we'll add the points so that we don't need to do all of the casting and checks for this. But this does demonstrate the issue with inheritance and why we tend to use some other methods that we'll be getting into to deal with extra stuff like that. Well, if a normal customer is booking a premium room, then we don't need to have any extra functionality. That's right, I need to check the credit rating. Now that for the next lab, so if their credit rating is already bad, they can't become a VIP client. So we assume that if their credit rating is bad, they can't be VIP. So I would add another check to make sure the credit rating is not poor or unknown. But if they're using a room as a VIP client, we're already going to assume their credit is good enough.
Yeah, if the credit is poor, we can use the room and this reservoir to throw an error if it is a poor and the room is a premium room. It just in this method is okay, and never need to write another overload. Yeah.
Okay, so what sort of questions do we have about this stuff? How are we feeling about the little methods we've added here?
No, this stuck me a lot of time.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too. I stopped there because I couldn't use properties of child
Yeah.
class. So
Oh, I see. Sorry, so the lists was difficult to use?
yeah, that's the issue which Lane mentioned, that I couldn't use properties of child class in this example of premium room and VIP client, and I didn't go further.
Okay. Yeah, that's so as I was saying, like inheritance is useful, but inheritance also makes things messy and complicated. So we're going to get into some better means to do things. And I kind of, looking back on this, I kind of wish I hadn't done the inheritance part because it overcomplicates a lot of this. The important takeaway here is it's really the adding connections in create room, the fact that we add the room to the list in the hotel. When we reserve a room, we add the reservation to the room's reservations. We add the reservation to the client's reservations. And then we put them on the hotel's list as well. That's kind of the important thing. I feel like unfortunately, adding the inheritance kind of overcomplicates the example. So I think I'm going to have to reevaluate if I keep that. Because that's not supposed to really throw everybody off like that. It's not supposed to make things as challenging as they are. So I apologize for kind of overcomplicating the issue.
Yeah, I think instead of inheriting, it might be to set a type of or level of different room or level of different clients, so that we can judge check the level to find if it's a it's premium room or not. Then
Yeah, as
actually,
property. Yeah.
That is actually so when you guys get into design patterns, if you're interested, you don't need to know this. But when we get into design patterns, we'll get into the idea of decorators. And decorators are like inheritance, but instead of having, a room instead of having classes inherit from each other, they'll actually add on to each other. So we'd add on like a premium thing onto that room, which is a bit more complicated than how it sounds, but a really common way to do that is have a very basic class, but then kind of add on other classes to add on functionality. And that tends to work much better. The common idea of it is like having a donut class and then putting on a sprinkles class or something like that. Okay. So that went a bit over and got a bit more complicated than I was hoping it would be. But I hope that's helpful for kind of understanding what we're trying to get at with this idea of using methods on our hotel to control how these objects are made, as well as being able to use config to add some values of our own. I think tomorrow we'll work with a more straightforward example using IDs. So I think that'll be a bit simpler. But I also wanted to ask for people here, do we want to review the whole thing tomorrow? Or do we want to move ahead?
Like you're saying, like this whole piece over again?
Yeah, I guess, do we want to like do the whole thing forward to back, or do we want to move ahead? So Sarah's saying review the whole thing.
I'm okay. Okay.
I'd like to see the whole thing, but like, could I make a suggestion? Like, is it possible to do it at the beginning so that when you give us new stuff, then I still have you to ask questions? Because now if you give us new stuff, you're gone and I don't have you for questions. I mean, I still bug
Totally.
you at everything, but it's not
No, that the structure was a bit weird today because I didn't expect last lab to take as long. So I figured, oh, they can all do it, and then we'll review at the end. But that didn't work out great. So yeah, let's say
for sure. Whatever you need to do, I just that's what works for me.
I'll post up a solution tomorrow before we get started. And if anyone has any questions about it or if they want to review it, we can do that. If they don't, I will provide a new lab. And it will be fairly short, I think that makes sense.
Maybe tomorrow, Mohammed will send us assignment. Is that right?
That would make my life much easier, but we'll see.
Yeah, that I want to ask. What is about the assignment when it will be? Because he mentioned something that this week it will be end of this course.
Okay. If you guys are getting the assignment tomorrow, then that actually gives me a pretty good idea of what we're doing, because then we can review for people who want to. And if anybody wants to talk about the assignment or just work on the assignment, we can do that too.
But I'm not sure that it will be happen.
I'll ask Mohammed.
None of us are sure of anything. So, yeah. Do you you don't know when our assignment's coming out?
I don't know many things.
Is it hard? Does it have lots of exceptions like catch and throw? Because I don't have any
No.
problem with that.
It's a lot of fun. A lot of people love this assignment. So I will tell you that it's a lot of fun. I still
Really?
have mine. Yeah, I'm being serious. A lot of people really enjoy it.
So there aren't a lot of I won't need to use catch and throw.
No, we can get some error handle. We can do some review and error handling. You know what? Has Mohammed given you guys answers for the in-class stuff? Because I know you guys were saying you kind of get in-class assignments, but then you don't really talk about them afterwards.
I asked him to, and so he's been posting at the end of lectures, in Slack.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna have to do some thinking on what we're gonna do for next lab, but I will keep you guys posted. I'm not sure about our schedule right now.
Okay. So there's nothing due for tomorrow for lab? Sorry, I didn't look.
Due for tomorrow. So we have the enum stuff that I added.
Okay.
So if you can add the enum functionality, that's awesome. Yeah, so that's the main thing, is to finish everything up to the enum functionality.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll let you guys know if there's the assignment tomorrow or not. Yeah, sorry things have been so kind of slapped together lately. I realize I've been changing around a lot about the labs, so